Oh, would you look at that? J.K. Rowling is actually aware that somebody is adapting Harry Potter to the screen once again, and she's finally broken her silence about some of the casting, not other, much more controversial aspects of the casting. But yeah, I guess she got her heads out of the trans minds long enough to comment a little bit on the show. J.K. Rowling praises Harry Potter trio casting, but stays silent on Paapa Essiedu Snape controversy because she already made her statement on that, bro. I don't know why you're so upset about that, bro. She's fighting a good fight out there, bro, because she wants to make sure that guys stay out of women's spaces. We need to protect the sanctity of women's spaces. Yeah, after they spend generations infiltrating male spaces and then just ruining them, and then when they go and get a little bit of turnabout to just expose the farce that women's sports is, then they just want to cry foul and they want other guys to come in and fix their issues for them. Stop me if I thought you were self-proclaimed strong, independent women that don't need no men. But I digress. As excitement builds around HBO's upcoming Harry Potter television series, which it's weird, right? Because earlier this week we talked about HBO and just their inability to properly capitalize on their IPs. At one point in time when this was first announced, I was big excited because I'm a fan of the movies, quite a big fan of the movies, and some of the extended lore, the Fantastic Beasts movies. Well, you know, we don't really need to consider them to be canonical at all, do we? They just got a couple of characters that you might remember. You can forget about them like prequels, like because people don't normally take into account, you know, certain canonical aspects of other franchises' prequels. So yeah, you could do the same here, right? But yeah, man, it's for my generation, it's arguably the most important franchise, so the opportunity to run it back and to really be more faithful to the source material, that was a tantalizing prospect. And then they decided to black up Snape rather, and make Hermione a true to form mudblood. I mean, we know. And I understand that there have been a lot of people going, I'm actually fine with the casting. I don't know. She was described like that in the books. Okay, yeah, big bushy brown hair, buck teeth, and something else is okay, actually this isn't a very good representation because I have been out in the sun quite a bit. You know, I'm a little bit tanned, but oh yeah, there you go. The underside of things, okay, because that's just how the sun works when you're outside running. Oh yeah, no. She was described a certain way as opposed to another way, but no, this is all fine. It's all great. I'm totally fine with it, bro. I don't know why you're so upset about it. They're just kids. It's like, yeah, I'm not attacking the kids. I'm attacking the casting agents who definitely have an agenda to push, and we got some ideologically driven writers that you know are going to make race a much bigger aspect in this story, because why would you change Snape the way that you did if you weren't trying to push a certain directive? You weren't trying to make it appeal to modern audiences. Because the people that are most likely to engage with this product, it's not like they didn't grow up in like a 1990s, early 2000s setting, you know, alongside when the books were releasing, the movies were first coming out. No, why would you want to go ahead and reflect something like that would be analogous to the way that those guys and gals grew up? But anyways, yes, last week, Rowling broke her silence, praised the casting in the trio of young leads of Harry, Ron, and Hermione. However, she is still notably avoid addressing ongoing controversy surrounding Paapa Essiedu as race-swapped Severus Snape. On May 27th, HBO announced that Dominic McLaughlin, Arabella, no need to add any more additional letters to her name, Arabella Stanton, and Alistair Stout would take on the iconic roles of Harry, Hermione, and Ron, respectively. The casting came after a worldwide search for Harry Potter leads Rowling created in her exceptionally successful novels, including more than 30,000 young actors. And one guy that was 35 years old who wanted to try out for the role of Hermione. No, I'm not talking about Jason Isaacs. Rowling, who serves as executive producer on the series, I'm sure that she's very involved. I shared her enthusiasm on social media. All three are wonderful. I couldn't be happier. Thanks. So glad you broke your silence for that one. I'm so glad you're so invested in this. McLaughlin has performed alongside Ralph Fiennes, which honestly, like in a few years' time, if this thing is going to play out the way that HBO handles the rest of their series, so in about a decade's time when they need to properly cast Lord Voldemort once again, I mean, let Rafe run it back. That would be great. He was perfect in that role. And he would still be perfect in that role even 10 years on. Right about the same time that they're probably going to have to recast, Dumbledore again, because John Lithgow, that poor prick, he's already said that it might be the last thing that he does. So anyways, while Stanton has starred in Matilda the Musical on the West End of London, Stout gained attention for his resemblance to Rupert Grint, which honestly, man, I think he's more of a stereotypical ginger than even the original Ron Weasley even was. But while Rowling has offered unqualified support for the newly revealed trio, her silence on the more controversial Harry Potter casting of Paapa Essiedu as Severus Snape has not gone unnoticed. Essiedu's casting as Severus Snape, announced earlier this year, sparked immediate online debate. Critics questioned the decision to alter the character's established depiction from the books and the films, particularly the one so strongly associated with the late Alan Rickman, which, yeah, even back when he was first announced, that there would have been book purists up in arms on that one. Same way that some of Peter Jackson's interpretations and takes on, certain aspects, phasing out Glorfindel and letting Arwen take a much more prominent spot in Fellowship, removing Tom Bombadil, the Barrow Downs, selling a Bag End, moving to a different part of the Shire, glossing over the, 50-year time span that I guess is going to get flushed out, and the hunt for Gollum, God, because that was what was supposed to be going on during the time when Gandalf first thought that the ring that Bilbo had was in fact the One Ring, and then went and researched it, and yeah, that was taking a long stretch of time. But because it's a different medium, it's not a book, it's not the written word telling said story, you have to adapt it for film, so you're condensing that, or simply hand waving away such a big gap in time is a little bit more forgivable. Alan Rickman was already derided as being too old for the role, even though he bared a reasonable resemblance to the J.K. Rowling described depiction of Snape. He was arguably too attractive, which is kind of strange to think about, but all right. But this time around, it's kind of like how War of the Rohirrim was supposed to be a story about Helm Hammerhand and his greatest exploits that led to several aspects of Helm's Deep and Helm's Dyke and Helm's... God, there's another aspect to that. Oh, jeez. It also got the name of Helm Hammerhand because the actual fortress is called the Hornburg. I've been listening to a lot of Tolkien lore recently, and it's all very good. It's all fantastic stuff, and just to think how it's been butchered and how it's going to be butchered into the future, it's kind of like, my appreciation for Harry Potter, where I've never really gotten that deep into the lore, and the stuff that I know is already going to get repurposed, so I hate it. I hate it a lot, because I don't know, like maybe Essiedu, he gets some prosthetics, he gets a long old greasy black hair, and he plays a blinder as Snape. But we know that we're not in a vacuum when it comes to this casting decision. We know that they chose him for a specific reason, not because he was the best guy for the role, but because he was more appropriate for the messaging that they want to push. But hey, HBO, well, we kind of know that Warner Brothers Discovery, the parent company, is in a bit of a financial bind. We talked about this earlier this week. I made mention before. And if they did this show right, if they do this show right, it will be the biggest thing in the world because it already has an insurmountably large built-in fan base, and they could have another Game of Thrones on their hands, okay? Because there is a definitive conclusion to this story, they won't have to worry about making something up before they get to the end. But if this rumor is anything to go on, HBO Harry Potter series allegedly to cost between $2 and $8 billion. According to the Daily Mail, budget discrepancies explode as audience challenges mount from all sides. Because, yeah, here's the thing, man. Like, I know that there are people that intrinsically hate J.K. Rowling because of the whole trans issue. And that, honestly, like, they're vocal on social media. But in reality, it's such a small subsection. It might be 5% of the overall Harry Potter fan base that actually gives a shit about that. And ultimately, of that 5% that just wants to say that I'm never going to support anything that J.K. Rowling ever does again, I would want to know just how many of those people are just going to watch the show anyways when it's all said and done. How much of their, unconquerable and unquestioning adherence to the message they will just somehow find a little bit of wavering and a little bit of capitulation when they, properly hear the Harry Potter jingle kick up on Sunday evening on HBO. But because this project has been announced for 18 months at this point in time, we've heard a couple of different production ideas. Now, it's been a minute since we heard anything concrete on the casting, and we still have a lot of roles to cast for, both for future seasons and even just for the first season. Okay, wonder if they're going to race swap Draco Malfoy. My money's firmly in one camp on that one. Or what about the Dursleys? But I digress. We've heard that, a lot of the sets from the movies, because Warner Brothers was the one that, produced those movies, they distributed them as well. They still have a lot of those sets intact. They were going to be reusing them, which is, first of all, just, it makes sense budgetarily speaking. And then, of course, even if they want to, and this would be a tasteful example of both fan service and key jangling by just, hey, we still got, most of, because I think there was a little bit of fire damage after the filming of the Battle of Hogwarts, but I think a lot of the school is still intact. Same with most of Diagon Alley. Like, there's a lot of stuff that is still there and is still workable. So if they could go ahead and repurpose that, that would just be that's just a smart decision. Okay, all said and done. So where is this huge budget coming from? Let's take a look. The upcoming Harry Potter television series from HBO could be one of the most expensive shows in television history, with reports from the Daily Mail of an astronomical budget. According to the Daily Mail, each episode of the series is expected to cost a staggering 75 million. I beg your pardon. If these episodes aren't like an hour and a half, 2 hours long, that is retarded, which is more than $100 million USD. However, this figure contradicts earlier reporting by the outlet. Okay, with an estimated 8 episodes per season. Fuck, man. Okay, over 7 seasons. Yes, 1 for each novel. That puts the total production budget at approximately $4.2 billion, or about $5.4 billion. Oh my God, at current exchange rates. However, Daily Mail reportedly alleged that a full 10 seasons of the show, which is the latest reported budget, would cost around $8 billion. 10 seasons of the show? Now, I know that some of those later books, like especially from 4 onwards, from Goblet of Fire onwards, it gets rather unruly in length. So if you want to extrapolate some of that stuff out, and then, yeah, definitely when it comes to the movies, yeah, they split Deathly Hallows into 2 books, and, I gotta imagine there's probably a lot of stuff that's in there that couldn't properly be adapted, especially with the story that they were telling in a truncated version for the cinemas that, yeah, you could probably flush out. And so if you break down some of those other plot lines and aspects, I could see how you could get to 10 seasons, but still, the $75 to $100 million per episode, that just, the math ain't mathin' on that one, okay? If true, this would place Harry Potter, yes, firmly in the upper echelon of most expensive TV productions ever made. It would exceed Amazon's, yes, The Rings of Power, which reportedly cost $465 million for the first season. Their total franchise costs, including rights acquisitions, push The Rings of Power bill north of $1 billion. But according to a February 2024 report from the Daily Mail, Warner Brothers Discovery initially planned for 10 consecutive seasons of Harry Potter with a budget of approximately $200 million per season. Well, still, the math on that one is, yeah, in on and around $2 billion, guys. I don't know. Ain't no mathematician, but I can move a decimal point. At that estimate, the full production, yes, would be around $2 billion, putting it on par with other high-budget offerings like House of the Dragon, which, yeah, this is HBO, man. Okay, this isn't like Amazon, who you cannot see that much money on the screen. Some of the shots look good. A lot of the CGI looks like absolute ass, but HBO, okay, like House of the Dragon, even if you might think of wavering quality when it comes to the second season of that shit looks fucking immaculate. I can imagine they could also work a similar strain of magic with Harry Potter. I'll see myself out. Still, that's just way too much money, man. Even if you adapt all the more fantastical elements, even if you have a house elf in every goddamn episode, if everybody shows up to each class, if they show Hermione using a time turner and the proper mechanics behind that in every fucking episode, and then you have Harry and Ron show up both on flying broomsticks or riding a hippogriff between the different towers in Hogwarts, okay, I don't know how you get to that budget. I really don't, but still, even with the goofy casting, like, I really want to like this show. It's just, it's giving me every reason not to get excited for it. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see how things start to progress, because ultimately, like, we'll get the full casting before the end of the year. It's supposed to be going into production, I think late summer, early fall, something like that. So we're not likely to see this probably until 2027, which is just wild to think about. And so when this thing ultimately does come to screen, who even knows if Black Snape is going to be the most controversial aspect to this? Who knows, man? Time will tell. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.